Today, you're going to hear a heartwarming story about a lonely billionaire whose life changes when a little girl innocently asks to borrow him as a dad. Before this exciting story, tell us where you're listening from and leave a like if you enjoy it, or comment something if you don't like it. In the heart of Manhattan, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and the wealthy walked with purpose, lived Alexander Rhodes, a 45-year-old billionaire known for his ruthless business tactics and cold demeanor. His company, Rhodes Enterprises, was responsible for some of the most aggressive corporate takeovers in recent history. The business world feared him, competitors avoided him, and the media portrayed him as heartless. Few knew the truth behind his hardened exterior: a childhood of neglect, a failed marriage that ended when his ex-wife couldn't bear his workaholic lifestyle, and a stillborn son that had shattered his hope for family 15 years ago. Alexander's penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park, a vista worth millions that he barely noticed anymore. His mornings followed the same routine: wake at 5 a.m., exercise in his private gym, breakfast prepared by a chef but eaten alone, and then off to work in his chauffeured Bentley. The walls of his life were built with money and success, but they were walls nonetheless. On a crisp autumn Saturday, something unusual happened. His assistant, Melissa, who had worked for him for 8 years and was perhaps the closest thing he had to a friend, had an emergency. Her sister had been admitted to the hospital, and Melissa needed someone to watch her 6-year-old daughter, Emma, for a few hours. Mr. Rhodes, I wouldn't ask if I had any other option, Melissa said over the phone, her voice strained. It would just be for a few hours while I make sure my sister is stable. I know it's completely unprofessional. Bring her to the park across from my building, Alexander interrupted, surprising even himself. I have some work to do, but I can keep an eye on her. When Melissa arrived with Emma, Alexander was sitting on a bench with his laptop, looking completely out of place in his tailored suit among the casual weekend parkgoers. Emma, with her curly brown hair and bright blue eyes, regarded him with curiosity rather than the intimidation most people showed. Emma, this is Mr. Rhodes, my boss. He's going to watch you while I check on Aunt Lily. Be good, okay? Melissa said, kneeling to her daughter's level. After Melissa left, Emma sat quietly next to Alexander for approximately 7 minutes before the silence became unbearable for her. What are you doing? She asked, peering at his laptop. Working, Alexander replied, not looking up. On Saturday? That's boring, Emma declared with the honesty only children possess. Alexander glanced at her, a slight curve appearing at the corner of his mouth. Sometimes adults have to do boring things. Emma nodded sagely. My mom says that too. She works a lot because of her boss. She swung her legs, which didn't reach the ground. Is he mean? Alexander coughed, closing his laptop. I'm her boss. Oh, Emma's eyes widened. Are you mean? The question struck him harder than any business negotiation. I expect excellence, he answered carefully. That sounds mean, Emma said simply, then changed the subject with childlike fluidity. Can we get ice cream? Mom always lets me have ice cream at the park. Before Alexander knew it, he was standing in line at an ice cream cart, something he hadn't done in decades. As they sat eating their cones, vanilla for him, strawberry with rainbow sprinkled for Emma, he found himself answering her endless questions about the ducks in the pond, why the sky was blue, and if he liked being a grown-up. Do you have kids? Emma asked, ice cream dripping down her hand. No, Alexander said, handing her a napkin. Why not? Don't you like kids? Alexander paused. I was going to have a son once, but he didn't get to be born. Emma considered this with a seriousness that seemed beyond her years. That's sad. My dad doesn't live with us anymore. He lives in California with his new family. She looked at a father pushing his son on a swing nearby. Sometimes I wish I could borrow someone else's dad. Alexander followed her gaze. Borrow a dad? Yeah, just for things like pushing swings and scary spiders and stuff. She looked up at him. Can I borrow you? Just until my mom comes back. The request knocked the air from his lungs. This child knew nothing of his reputation, his wealth, or his power. To her, he was simply a potential spider killer and swing pusher. I suppose you can, he found himself saying. For today. The next 2 hours were a revelation. Alexander Rhodes, The man whose mere presence in a boardroom could cause stock prices to fluctuate pushed a little girl on a swing. He helped her climb the jungle gym, careful hands ready to catch her if she fell. When she found a cool rock that was just a piece of gravel, he examined it with the same attention he'd give to a potential multi-million-dollar acquisition. When Melissa returned, looking tired but relieved, she found her daughter and her boss sitting on the grass, Emma teaching him how to make a daisy chain. Mr. Rhodes, thank you so much. I hope she wasn't too much trouble, Melissa said, her surprise evident. She was no trouble, Alexander said, standing and brushing off his expensive pants. How is your sister? Stable. It was her appendix, but they caught it in time. Emma tugged on Alexander's sleeve. Thanks for being my borrowed dad today. You're pretty good at it. As Melissa led Emma away, the little girl turned and waved, calling back, Maybe I can borrow you again sometime. Alexander raised his hand in a small wave, standing alone in the park that had suddenly become quiet. Something had shifted inside him, a door long closed, creaking open just slightly. The following Monday, Alexander arrived at work to find a crayon drawing on his desk of what appeared to be a tall stick figure and a small stick figure at a park. In the corner was written in wobbly letters, Thank you for the ice cream. Love, Emma. He carefully placed the drawing in his desk drawer, but found himself opening it several times throughout the day. During a particularly contentious meeting, when he would normally have eviscerated the unprepared marketing team, he found himself thinking of Emma's question, Are you mean? Instead of his usual approach, he dismissed the team with instructions to return when they were better prepared. His assistant noticed the change immediately. Are you feeling all right, Mr. Rhodes? Melissa asked cautiously. I'm fine, he replied, then added, Emma is a remarkable child. You should be proud. Melissa blinked in surprise. Thank you, sir. She really enjoyed Saturday. She hasn't stopped talking about her borrowed dad. 2 weeks passed, during which Alexander found himself thinking frequently about Emma's innocent request. One evening, as he sat alone in his penthouse reviewing contracts, his phone rang. It was Melissa, her voice apologetic. Mr. Rhodes, I'm so sorry to bother you after hours, but I have an emergency. My sister has had complications and needs to be readmitted to the hospital. My mother, who usually watches Emma, is out of town, and bring her here, Alexander said without hesitation. Sir, bring Emma to my apartment. I'll watch her while you handle your sister's situation. An hour later, Emma was exploring his penthouse with wide-eyed wonder, while Alexander awkwardly tried to figure out what to do with a 6-year-old in a home designed for entertaining business associates, not children. Your house is like a castle, Emma declared, running her hand along his Italian leather sofa. But where are all your toys? Are you enjoying our story? Tell us where you're watching our videos from. Leave in the comments your city and what else you like to hear. Suggest a story for us. Alexander realized with a start that there was nothing remotely child-friendly in his entire home. I don't have toys, he admitted. Emma looked at him with genuine pity. That's the saddest thing I ever heard. That night, Alexander Rhodes, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself utterly flummoxed by a child's bedtime routine. He ordered dinner from a high-end restaurant only to discover Emma wouldn't eat anything on the menu. He ended up calling his chef at home to rush over and make chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs. When it came time for bed, he realized he had no suitable place for a child to sleep. His guest rooms were sophisticated spaces with valuable art and antique furniture. In the end, Emma slept in his massive king-sized bed while he dozed uncomfortably on the sofa, worried she might wake up and need something. In the middle of the night, he heard a small voice. Mr. Rhodes? I had a bad dream. He found Emma standing in the hallway, clutching a pillow nearly as big as she was. I see, he said completely out of his depth. Would you like some water? She shook her head. When I have bad dreams, Mom lets me sleep with her. And so Alexander Rhodes, feared titan of industry, found himself lying rigidly on one side of his bed while a small child curled up on the other, falling instantly back to sleep. As he listened to her soft breathing, something broke loose inside him. A grief he'd kept carefully controlled for 15 years, for the son he never got to comfort after nightmares. When Melissa arrived early the next morning, She found Alexander in the kitchen, attempting to make pancakes while Emma instructed him on the proper amount of chocolate chips to add. Too many, Mr. Rhodes. Mom only lets me have 5 in each pancake. 5 seems arbitrary, Alexander replied seriously. What's the reasoning behind that specific number? Melissa cleared her throat, and both turned to her with matching guilty expressions. I hope she wasn't too much trouble, Melissa said, noticing the flour dusting her boss's usually immaculate appearance. She was no trouble at all, Alexander said, and meant it. Then, surprising both Melissa and himself, he added, in fact, I'd be happy to help anytime you need someone to watch her. Over the next few months, Emma became a regular visitor to Alexander's life. He had a room in his penthouse redecorated for her, consulting with a top children's interior designer to create a space any 6-year-old would dream of. He adjusted his schedule to attend her school play, sitting awkwardly among the other parents, but beaming with pride when Emma spotted him and waved enthusiastically from a stage. At work, people noticed the change in him. He was still demanding and exacting, but the cruel edge had softened. He implemented a company-wide family leave policy that was the most generous in the industry. When asked about in a Business Journal interview, he simply said, I've recently gained perspective on what matters. Of course, not everyone was pleased with the new Alexander Rhodes. His board of directors grew concerned when he rejected an acquisition that would have been highly profitable but would have resulted in thousands of layoffs. This isn't like you, Alexander, said Victor Harmon, his longest-serving board member. Since when do you care about the human element? We have shareholders to answer to. Since I realize there are more important things than money, Alexander replied. We can find another way to grow that doesn't destroy families. The confrontation with the board escalated when they threatened to vote him out if he didn't return to his old tactics. Alexander stood firm, even as he faced losing the company he had built from nothing. During this professional crisis, Emma contracted pneumonia and was hospitalized. Alexander dropped everything, canceling crucial meetings to sit by her bedside, reading her favorite stories, and ensuring she had the best medical care available. You don't have to stay, Melissa told him, touched but concerned about his business responsibilities. Yes, I do, he replied simply. She borrowed me as her dad, remember? This is what dads do. As Emma recovered, news broke that the board was making moves against Alexander. The business world buzzed with speculation about the fall of the great Alexander Rhodes, undone by what many saw as a sudden attack of conscience. On the day of the board vote, Alexander was prepared to lose everything he had built. But as he entered the boardroom, he found unexpected allies. Employees had organized, shareholders had spoken up, and even some board members had been swayed by the positive press his new approach had generated. The vote went in his favor, but just barely. You almost lost everything, Victor warned him afterward. All because of some employee's kid who's made you soft. Alexander looked at him with clarity he'd never possessed before. You're wrong, Victor. I almost lost everything years ago when I convinced myself that success only looked like power and money. Emma didn't make me soft. She reminded me how to be human. That evening, as Alexander sat with Melissa and Emma in the hospital while Emma finished her final round of antibiotics, he made a decision. Melissa, he said carefully, I'd like to create a new position at Rhodes Enterprises, Chief of Community Impact. The role would involve overseeing all our charitable initiatives, with flexible hours and significantly higher compensation. I think you'd be perfect for it. Melissa stared at him. Are you offering me a promotion because of what I've been going through with Emma? I'm offering you a promotion because you're capable and because I've realized my company needs to change its priorities. But yes, it would give you more time with Emma and financial security for both of you. As they discussed the details, Emma, who they thought was sleeping, spoke up. Does this mean I can borrow Mr. Rhodes more often? Alexander smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. Actually, Emma, I was hoping we could make a more permanent arrangement. Not just borrowing. 6 months later, Alexander stood nervously at Melissa's front door, holding flowers and a small velvet box. Their relationship had evolved gradually from employer and employee to friends to something deeper, built on mutual respect and their shared love for Emma. On Emma's 7th birthday, Alexander hosted a party at his penthouse, now transformed into a warm home with photos on the walls and toys occasionally left in inappropriate places. As he watched Emma blow out her candles, surrounded by friends from school, he caught Melissa's eye across the room and saw his own happiness reflected there. Later, after the guests had gone and Emma was tucked in bed, Alexander and Melissa sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "I never thought my life would look like this," Alexander admitted, holding her hand. "Regrets?" Melissa asked softly. He shook his head. "The opposite. I'm grateful every day that Emma asked to borrow me. I had everything money could buy, but nothing that mattered." The following spring, in a small ceremony in Central Park near the bench where he had first watched Emma, Alexander married Melissa. Emma served as flower girl, proudly telling anyone who would listen, "I borrowed him first, but now we're keeping him forever." As they exchanged vows, Alexander thought about the journey that had brought him here, from feared billionaire to borrowed dad to a man who had found his heart again. His company was thriving under its new ethical direction. His home was filled with laughter instead of silence, and the walls he had built around himself had crumbled completely. During the reception, Emma tugged on his sleeve, a habit she had never outgrown. "Can I tell you a secret?" she whispered when he bent down. "Of course." "I knew you weren't mean that first day in the park," she said confidently. "You looked sad, not mean. Everyone at Mom's office was scared of you, but I thought you just needed someone to borrow you." Alexander hugged her tightly, marveling at the wisdom of children. "You were right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I needed that more than you did." 1 year later, Alexander sat in a hospital waiting room, more terrified than he had ever been in any boardroom. After hours of pacing and coffee, a nurse finally appeared. "Mr. Rhodes, your wife and daughter would like to see you." He entered the room to find Melissa propped up in bed, tired but radiant, with Emma standing beside her, peering in wonder at the tiny bundle in her mother's arms. "Come meet your son," Melissa said softly. Alexander approached carefully, his heart pounding. As he looked down at the infant's face, he felt the final piece of his heart heal. Not replacing the son he had lost years ago, but creating space for new love alongside that old grief. "What should we name him?" he asked, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. Emma, now 8 and taking her role as big sister very seriously, had been contemplating this important decision for months. "I think we should name him Theodore," she announced. "It means gift from God." I looked it up. Alexander met Melissa's eyes over their children's heads, seeing in them the same overwhelming gratitude he felt. "Theodore it is," he agreed. As they sat together, a family created through chance, kindness, and a child's simple request to borrow a dad, Alexander Rhodes, once the most feared billionaire in New York, knew he had found something no amount of money could ever buy: a second chance at love, family, and becoming the man he was always meant to be. Years later, when asked about the turning point in his life, Alexander would always tell the story of a little girl in a park who didn't know who he was or what he had, but somehow saw exactly what he needed. "She asked if she could borrow me as a dad," he would say, not knowing that in reality, she was saving me from a life not worth living. The hospital room, still smelling faintly of antiseptic and new life, became the crucible of Alexander's renewed existence. Theodore, a tiny, perfect bundle, represented not a replacement for the son he'd lost, but a profound expansion of his capacity for love. Emma, now 8, hovered protectively, her small hand gently stroking the baby's cheek, a nascent maternal instinct already blooming. Melissa, though weary, radiated a quiet joy that illuminated the room more brightly than any fluorescent light. This was it, Alexander realized, the true wealth he had unknowingly sought for so long, a treasure far more valuable than any corporate empire. Life in the Rhodes-Martinez household, for Melissa had insisted on keeping her surname, a decision Alexander respected and admired, seeing it as a testament to her independent spirit, settled into a rhythm that was both chaotic and deeply fulfilling. Alexander, once a creature of rigid schedules and solitary pursuits, now found his mornings punctuated by Theodore's hungry cries and Emma's enthusiastic, if sometimes off-key, singing from her newly redecorated room. His penthouse, once a sterile monument to his ambition, was now a vibrant home, filled with the sounds of children and the scent of Melissa's home cooking. Toys, once an alien concept, were scattered artfully or not so artfully across Persian rugs, and Alexander often found himself stepping over a rogue building block or a forgotten doll. The private gym saw less of Alexander and more of Emma attempting acrobatic feats, while the chef, once accustomed to preparing single, austere meals, now mastered the art of organic baby food and Emma's favorite dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, often receiving detailed instructions from Emma herself. Melissa thrived in her role as chief of community impact. Rhodes Enterprises, under Alexander's subtly but profoundly altered leadership, was becoming a beacon of corporate responsibility. The family leave policy, initially met with skepticism by some board members, had proven to be a powerful recruitment and retention tool, boosting morale and productivity across all departments. Melissa spearheaded initiatives that invested deeply in local communities, funded comprehensive educational programs for underprivileged youth, and supported struggling families with practical resources and mentorship, projects that Alexander, in his former life, would have dismissed as unprofitable distractions, mere charitable write-offs. Now, he found himself genuinely engaged, attending charity galas not out of obligation, but out of a burgeoning sense of purpose and a genuine desire to make a tangible difference. He even found himself smiling, genuinely, for photographs, a rare occurrence that baffled Veteran Society reporters and even his own PR team. He was often quoted in business journals speaking passionately about conscious capitalism and the importance of a triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit, a stark contrast to his former reputation. Emma, meanwhile, blossomed into a bright, compassionate child. Her bond with Alexander deepened with each passing year, solidifying into an unbreakable connection. He was no longer just her borrowed dad. He was her dad, a constant, loving presence who listened intently to her stories about school, helped her with math homework, and patiently explained complex business concepts in terms she could understand, often using analogies involving ice cream or superheroes. When Theodore was old enough to crawl, Emma became his fierce protector and enthusiastic playmate, teaching him the important things in life, like how to properly stack building blocks, the best way to hide from grown-ups during hide-and-seek, and the secret to making Alexander laugh so hard he snorted. Alexander often watched them, a profound sense of contentment settling over him, marveling at the simple beauty of their sibling bond. The board, initially wary of Alexander's softening and his newfound emphasis on social responsibility, had grudgingly come to accept and even appreciate the new direction. While profits remained robust, the company's public image had undergone a remarkable transformation. Rhodes Enterprises was no longer synonymous with ruthless takeovers, but with ethical leadership and community engagement. Victor Harmon, Alexander's long-serving board member, still occasionally grumbled about the human element and the distraction of philanthropy, but even he had to admit that the company's stock was performing better than ever, attracting a new generation of socially conscious investors who valued ethical practices as much as financial returns. Alexander, however, no longer measured success solely by stock prices or quarterly reports. His true dividends were paid in the laughter echoing through his penthouse, the warmth of Melissa's hand in his, and the simple, profound joy of watching his children grow, knowing he was actively shaping a better future for them. There were still challenges, of course. The relentless demands of running a global enterprise didn't disappear, and Alexander still faced tough decisions that required his sharp intellect and strategic mind. But now, he approached them with a fundamentally different perspective. He sought solutions that benefited not just the bottom line, but also the employees, the communities, and the broader societal impact. He learned to delegate more effectively, trusting his capable team, and found that this not only freed up his time for his family, but also empowered his employees, leading to more innovative and sustainable outcomes. He even started taking proper, extended vacations, something he hadn't done in decades, often to quiet, family-friendly resorts where he could simply be dad rather than Mr. Rhodes trading power suits for swim trunks and board meetings for sandcastles. One particularly memorable summer, when Theodore was 3 and Emma was 11, they embarked on a road trip across the national parks. Alexander, who had once considered any travel outside a private jet an inconvenience, found himself genuinely enjoying the cramped car, the sing-alongs to Emma's pop music, and the simple, breathtaking beauty of the American landscape. He taught Theodore how to skip stones across a lake and helped Emma identify constellations in the vast night sky. One evening, sitting around a crackling campfire, roasting marshmallows until they were perfectly golden, Emma looked up at the vast, star-filled sky, her face illuminated by the dancing flames. "Dad," she said, her voice small and thoughtful, "do you ever miss being just a billionaire? Like before us?" Alexander chuckled softly, pulling her closer into the crook of his arm. "Emma, I am still a billionaire," he clarified, "but now I'm also a husband and a father. And believe me," he added, his gaze sweeping over Melissa, who was smiling at Theodore as he tried to catch fireflies in a jar, and then to the crackling fire and the endless expanse of stars above them. "Being a dad is a much richer experience than just being a billionaire. Money can buy a lot of things, Emma, beautiful homes, fast cars, even private jets. But it can't buy this." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "This," he said, his voice thick with emotion, a profound gratitude swelling in his chest. "This is what truly matters. This is priceless." Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied by his earnestness. "Good," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder, her small hand finding his. "Because I really like having you as my dad. And Theodore likes you too, even if he can't say it yet." The simple affirmation resonated deep within him, a powerful echo of the day she had first asked to borrow him. It was a testament to the profound shift that had occurred in his life, a transformation initiated by a child's innocent request for connection. He had once been a man defined by his losses, his grief, and his relentless pursuit of power and control. Now, he was defined by his love, his family, and the quiet, profound joy of everyday moments. The walls he had built around his heart had not just crumbled. They had been replaced by open windows, letting in the light and warmth he had unknowingly craved for so long, filling the empty spaces within him. Years turned into a decade, then more. Theodore grew into a curious, energetic boy, inheriting Emma's adventurous spirit and Melissa's gentle, thoughtful nature. Emma, now a confident young woman, navigated the complexities of high school and later college with a grace and intelligence Alexander admired, often seeking his advice on everything from friendships to future career paths, sometimes even challenging his business perspectives with her fresh, idealistic views. Their family dinners were lively affairs, filled with laughter, spirited debates, and the occasional spilled milk, now often cleaned up by Theodore. Alexander, once a silent observer of life, was now an active, engaged participant, fully present in every moment, cherishing the cacophony and warmth of his home. His relationship with Melissa deepened into a partnership built on unwavering trust, profound mutual respect, and a shared commitment to their family and their evolving values. They often spoke of the early days, of Melissa's emergency, of Emma's audacious, life-altering request. It was a story they would tell their children, and later, their grandchildren, a modern fairy tale of how a little girl's simple need had unlocked a hardened heart and transformed a titan of industry into a truly rich man. Alexander Rhodes, the man who had once been feared throughout the financial world, was now admired, not just for his continued business acumen and the ethical success of Rhodes Enterprises, but for his profound humanity. He had learned that true strength lay not in ruthless ambition, but in vulnerability, in connection, and in the boundless capacity of the human heart to heal and to love. He had found his ultimate purpose, not in the acquisition of more wealth or power, but in the cultivation of a life rich in meaning, surrounded by the vibrant, loving family he had never thought he would have. And it all began with a little girl, standing in a park, looking up at a formidable stranger, and asking, with the purest innocence, "Can I borrow your dad?" The question had been a key, unlocking a future he couldn't have imagined, a future where he was truly, finally, home.